alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sadid Lisani, Nawir Janani, Safi Amani, Wazid Barai. Viewers from around the world, thank you for watching Echo from TOUBA, happening here on Lamphal TV, on the Vedan in Dakar. We have this show every 2 weeks that highlights, you know, culture, religion, everything that has to do with our beautiful city of TOUBA, but also in general Senegal. But today we're very thrilled to have beautiful guests today. My friend Anne Warren, visiting from America, Lucy Matthew, Dory Jackson, and Rachel Martin. Welcome to the program, guys.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It is nice to have you too. We're going to have a beautiful topic today, inshallah, talking about languages and the mutations of it, but also a very useful tool, English, that is spoken by at least 5.something%, the percentages of world population. So it is one of the languages that has been chosen by the UN, spoken throughout the world, of course. We're going to go through the mutations of it, how firsthand they're from America, they're living English language over there. First, with Anne, we're going to start with you. How's English language doing in America?
Pretty good.
Is it? Right. But the mutation of it, you know, is the language has been spoken by over 200 years. Classical English, how that changes through actual English spoken in America?
Yeah, I mean, one interesting thing is you're talking about the United States has been around for, 200 plus years.
Right.
But like it does change over time, and I think one thing I've been thinking about recently is like, like our grandparents' generation had different accents than we do. Now that we have are living in a digital world and are connected, watching TV, listening to music from around the world, it seems like dialects are changing, which is interesting.
Right.
Even in a generation.
But is it truly a profound change in the English language? There's a big change from the classical to now? Something you can really verify it and see it?
I think it's been gradual over time. I think a part of it is also cultural. We are less formal than maybe our previous generations. For instance, my grandmother, just to use kind of an example of generational differences, like she would say slacks instead of pants or jeans.
Right.
She would say supper for dinner time. So those are just different vocabulary words that are different, and just the way of speaking was a little bit more formal during her time. Whereas I think as the generations keep changing, new words start being brought in to the language, but also just a way of being a little bit more formal, more accessible to people. Even in the academic level, there's a shift going towards being able to write in a way that's accessible to most people, even if they're not, necessarily academics themselves.
Anything to add on that?
I totally agree with what you just said, and it's changed over time, but I think it has changed more rapidly with the introduction of social media, with technology, the ability to exchange new words and to play with words, the ability to speak with other cultures that speak English but have their own English language patterns. And so you kind of create this melange of languages that seeps into the culture. And as Lucille said, there are words that previously were considered informal that have become just a part of the day-to-day
conversations. Right. Rachel?
Yeah, if I can build off of that, talking about social media and new technology, I think that's profoundly changing our grammar as well. As people text, as people WhatsApp, as you're writing that way, it's changing the expectation. It's been a fun conversation recently about, do you put a period at the end of your text messages? Of course, if you're writing a letter, there'd be no doubt you'd put it there. An email might be somewhere in between, but if you're texting and you put a period, that kind of means something different. It makes it a little bit more aggressive maybe, or you're really trying to make a point. Normally you would leave it off. The thought of leaving off a period from something you're writing to your friend even 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Radical change.
These are changes to grammar in addition to all the changes to vocabulary.
So I just wanted also to recall, because the English language, I mean, there's English spoken by English people, and that's English originated from from England. Is it also between those two languages? I mean, those two forms of spoken language, English England and American English. Is there a difference in it?
Oh, yes.
Is it a significant difference?
Spelling, lexicon.
Totally
England,
different.
Yeah.
So what made that change through history? How that change happen?
So a lot of it comes from just the history of America. America is a nation of people coming from all over the world.
Right.
And so with that, American English, we tend to borrow a lot of words from other languages. So we have a lot of French words that get mixed in there. You have Spanish words, Italian words. You have, so it's just this kind of melting pot. And that's where we're talking about the shift over the generations as you have different different ways of immigrants coming into the country, shifting the way that the language is spoken in the country.
Right. Is it also the language culturally, the culture, does it affect the language itself? Like the language is being spoken in different places. If you go to Kentucky, if you go to certain states, is it a variation of the languages of culture? And
Yeah.
go ahead.
I think that it's also kind of going back to the concept of immigration and the different waves of immigration that the U.S. has experienced has influenced how language has changed, and also even regionally within the United States there have been patterns of certain populations from certain countries coming to the U.S. So there is where I'm from, there's a significant influence of Spanish on the language. Even actually, it's starting to have an impact on the Spanish that's spoken in that region as well. A lot of parents are kind of complaining that their children don't speak the same Spanish that they grew up speaking. So there's an evolution that happens on both ends. And that's what makes British English a little different too, because they have different cultural influences from different immigration patterns that happen. So even regionally within the United States, depending on the immigrant patterns, and also just I think we are such a big country that over time accents start to change and develop because previously in the past, it was not so easy for us to travel and to get to know each other, even within our own country, because we are so big. So different forms of different vocabulary and different accents started to develop over time.
Culture and language, how that affect the spoken English over there in America?
Again, when you're from different regions, you run into different vocabulary, different accents. Even just how quickly you talk can be a regional variation. And for example, my husband and I are from different regions, and when we moved, everyone knew that he wasn't from Seattle. Even though he speaks English, he speaks an American English. Sometimes people would ask if he was Canadian, actually, because his accent, being from the Midwest, sounded more like Canada to us.
So obviously culture will affect languages and in terms of the way they speak it.
Yeah, well, I think it's a mutual thing too. But it does seem like every language is, every culture and every group of people that are living together, they're going to develop their own patterns of in own ways that they speak or ways that they act that are unique in different areas, and I think language reflects that.
This is it. We're glad today again to have our guests visiting from America, Fulbrights. Helping and intercultural mingling here in Africa. Since we're speaking of the languages of English, and you guys came in to teach that beautiful language here in Africa, is there going to be, before even we talk about Africa, is going to be a hurdle for you, a problem for you in terms of teaching a language that really goes through quickly through these type of mutations? Is this a problem you encountering in your teaching ground? And
not necessarily, and I think too, language is useful just in terms of who's using it and how you communicate. So even there's things that my students will say that, like when they're speaking English to each other, that it makes sense to them, things that their teachers say that we wouldn't necessarily use. But if it's effective in getting the meaning across, I don't see a problem with that. So I think
even if you're gathering a lot of people coming from different areas, having different kind of cultural, is it not going to be a problem from a teacher's standpoint?
Well, maybe more so from the student's perspective. Maybe I say something that they're not used to being said, that they don't understand it. Because yes, some people use British English. Sometimes their teachers say things in different ways. Their teachers at school versus myself as a Fulbright teacher would say.
Right. Is there a problem?
Well, no, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's something that actually gives some depth and some beauty to the language, because no two people speak the same. Even if you're from the same city, even if you're from the same family, everyone has their own different style. So I think when students hear from teachers who come from different backgrounds, it gives them more to sample from, more that they might connect with. Maybe they sound more like this, maybe they sound more like that. I know when I was studying a different language, having teachers that came from different backgrounds, when I had a new teacher, I could think, oh, so that's just something maybe they say in Paris, or oh, that's just something they say in Marseille. And it gave me more tools to choose from in how I wanted to express myself.
Right. Culture with the...
I think that at least the American perspective is that as long as we can understand you, that's all that really matters. It doesn't matter if it's exactly correct. It doesn't matter, you know, if it's exactly how an American would say it. It's just a question of understanding. So sometimes I actually find that students are very focused on the correctness of the language, but it really, I often don't find myself correcting students as much as they maybe think that they should be, just because I can understand them, and that's enough. And culturally in the United States, that's usually how people are. And then also I think that it really helps being a teacher, an English teacher in this particular time, because a lot of the social media networks that are popular around the world were more or less created in English-speaking contexts. And so as a result, I find that people actually have a lot more knowledge of English than maybe they did a few years ago. They're coming in with more knowledge than I think than you might expect.
Absolutely. Doria,
I was just going to jump in and add that one of the things we were talking about is the fact that language is a tool of it can be a tool of power, and it also can just be a tool of creativity. And so in America, as we said, we tend to be very forgiving with language, and we are constantly having conversations about the evolution of language, because I can speak more personally to being a part of the African American community. We have the African American English dialect that has come from kind of a melange of Southern dialects, has come from you know, British English, and then from African languages from when the slaves came over. So you have from Senegal all the way to Nigeria. All right, so you'll find certain word patterns, certain phrases where you have this mix. And oftentimes in conversation, you'll hear words thrown out, like finna, where it's like, where did that word come from? That doesn't sound like an English word, but it's a melange. From fixing to, which is Southern, and then it becomes finna, and I'm finna do this, which isn't always considered part of academic English, but it's part of the spoken language. And we talked about when you're working with students, as Lucille said, giving them the freedom to have conversations with ease in their mixing their local language with their learned language. And that's something that in America I think is very central to how we teach language.
But in terms of students' achievements, since you know they have in front of a teacher that might be from a different cultural thing, is it going to be a problem, a hurdle from the students' standpoint? Is it going to be a problem from them? How they cope with that?
I mean, it could just be an adjustment at first, but I think being exposed to different speakers is very valuable and can help them think more critically, help them think more creatively. If they're in a situation speaking with someone who speaks differently than they're used to, then it'll help them better adapt and better learn.
Because English is spoken differently in different Anglophone countries, so they're constantly going to be running up against different accents. They're speaking to somebody from Ghana, somebody from Nigeria, and then hearing us from America speaking to somebody from Jamaica, from Senegal, from region to region. So it's part of the listening practice of, as you are hearing different accents, how you process language.
I mean, English is a very flexible language in general. I think sometimes students in my classes get very hung up on the idea of, did I say this right? Is this the right way to say this? And I think something that we do a lot of is try to make sure that they know there's more than one way to say it.
Right.
So you can correct a grammar mistake, but once you've corrected the basic grammar mistake, I try and give my students, here's 2 or 3 ways to say the same idea so that they can choose and they can find how they want to say that, because English always gives you choices.
Right. Something you can add on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the real hurdle for students is not so much in the writing or the reading comprehension part, because English is fairly standardized. The listening aspect, that is an adjustment, and it's an adjustment. I think I know people in the United States who have issues with accents, you know, British accents. So I think it's a struggle for probably anybody who is an English language speaker. And I think here there are so many people coming from all over the world, some of which are coming from countries that aren't even necessarily Anglophone, and they speak English with, you know, their own accent. So it's just a question of adjustment. And in some ways I think that practice is actually really good for them. That practice that I think a lot of American students actually don't get, to really be able to adjust, and it's good for your brain.
Absolutely. Echo from TOUBA once again, getting members of Fulbright members, and Warren, Lucille Matthew, Dory Jackson to my right, and Raphael Martini visiting us, sharing us knowledge here on in terms of language, the English language, how we can use it as a tool actually to promote peace and a better cultural exchange, inshallah. All these videos will be uploaded, by the way, on Facebook. You can check it out, and please like that page. It's going to help promote promote the videos and stuff, like a window of opportunity for us from TOUBA to share also the teaching of Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba, his writings, his memorabilia is just wonderful. I suggest you guys to go and find some of his some books that are translated in English, and it's going to be useful. You can use that as a teacher. All knowledge is good. For the betterment of that. There's something really that comes back to my mind, though, which is the resiliency of English compared to in Senegal, for instance. We have Wolof, but we call it Frangolof, because we keep using all these French words inside. But I've seen English, though, maintaining, the cap, really being very firm in, keeping not completely all the traditional, but really being resilient. Where English got that force to just not seeing a English Spanish language or just an English line of clean spoken?
Well, I don't know. Once again, I go back to the idea of the melange, of the mixing, the patois, right? And you go to different Anglophone countries, and English is mixed in with the local languages of that place. And I think the flexibility, like what we talked about, I'm constantly talking to my students about the forgiving nature of English in terms of, especially I can speak to American English, but how forgiving it can be. And so in terms of a person learning English, that freedom to be able to mix in your culture, your mother language with this language. And so I think that flexibility allows for it to be a language that people maybe feel very comfortable with. You can play around with it. There's a lot of creativity with it. I think also the spread of culture, American culture, through music, through movies, has allowed for the proliferation of the language around the world.
Right. The resilience of English, though, compares to many other languages. I hardly speak a clean Wolof right now because of the effect of French. Trust me. So the resilience of English, what happened there?
I think that English has been standardized in certain contexts. So, like business contexts, academic contexts, such that, and it's been standardized for so long. I do think, though, at least in the United States, like Juria was saying, especially because we're becoming more and more aware of all the different identities that are encompassed within the United States, I think people are encouraged, at least casually, and often do, as like we have newer generations of people who are maybe the firstborn generation in the United States, but they come from, immigrant parents. They tend to adapt the language to work with also maybe their native language or their parents' native language as well. So I think informally, English is not necessarily very standardized. I think it is undergoing the same thing that probably Wolof is going on here. But I think from a professional and academic standpoint, it's and in the academic setting, people know to switch how they're using their language. So I think in Senegal, it's probably, you know, Wolof is a language that's used in the home, used socially. It's the common people's language. Or the lingua franca, as they like to say it, but also, you know, maybe French takes on a different role here in Senegal. So it's a little bit like that.
It's different, right?
Yeah, it's a different forms of English that happen in different settings.
Anything to add on that, Rochelle?
Well, if we take a long view of history, English has about a third of the English language is actually coming out of French. If we go back historically, English centuries back looks very, very different. So when you're taking English studies, when you're taking and studying English literature at the university level, I think a lot of American students are very surprised to read Old English because it doesn't resemble what we use now. So maybe some of those changes kind of already happened for us. So now it seems like it's pure English, but if you go back far enough, there are origins in many different languages that are embedded in English. We've just been using them for a couple hundred years, so now we consider them English, even though it didn't start there.
Beautiful, beautiful. Also, now you on a design program called Fulbright. What's Fulbright? What's the name of the person, or?
Yeah, so Fulbright was a senator from Arkansas, and he founded the Fulbright program, which is an exchange, an educational and cultural exchange between the U.S. and many different countries around the world. So there's English teachers, as the four of us are, but there's also people doing research. There's people also as well exchanging to the United States, in addition to Americans exchanging.
What is the eligibility of that group in order to be a member of the Fulbright movement?
Well, as Anna said, there's different types of Fulbright. So depending on the type of Fulbright you're applying to, there's different criteria. So there's Fulbright for journalists, there's Fulbright for artists, there's scholars. So oftentimes people who have been working for a long time in their field, scientists, professors, will come and teach different countries around the world. And then you, as Anna said, you have people coming from different parts of the world to the United States, depending on their specific field. And so the criteria varies depending on the program you're applying to. Yeah.
On Fulbright, anything you want to add on that?
Lucille?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, it's primarily, for us at least, our role here is as English teaching assistants and also for cultural exchange. And I think regardless of the kind of Fulbright that you have, one of your primary roles is to be engaged with the culture and to learn about another culture. And I think it's the learning aspect that's the most important. And obviously there's an exchange you want to share, and I think Senegal is an ideal place because people are really interested in learning about your culture. But it's also really important for the U.S. to learn about other cultures, and that's kind of the primary part.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Rochelle?
As Daria mentioned, there's a whole umbrella of different programs. So some of them are very short exchanges. We're here for 9 months. There's other ones that kind of stretch out over 1.5 years, close to 2 years. So it's a program that I would encourage people, if they have an interest, to go look and see if there might be some sort of a program that would fit their field and their availability, because we really do want it to be a two-way exchange where we're bringing some of American culture to Senegal, but where we learn as much and Senegalese people can share their culture with the U.S.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I guess that's an important point. We're mostly talking about Fulbright in the context of U.S. people coming to other countries, but actually there are Fulbright opportunities for people in any other country to also come to the U.S. So it's intended really.
Vice versa.
Yeah, so the scholarships and the opportunities go both ways.
It's beautiful, beautiful. I call this actually a global citizenship, though. We're all concerned. We're having one planet. We're going to have to work together in order for the betterment of it. Duria, why Senegal? We're a French-speaking country, you know, and why the reason you chose Senegal?
So I chose Senegal because I wanted to improve my French.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
There you
yes.
go.
So I've lived in other African nations,
right,
but they were all Anglophone.
They were. Yeah.
And so I decided this time.
What country was that?
So I've been in Ghana, I've lived in Ghana, and in Rwanda.
Okay.
Rwanda was switching from being Francophone to Anglophone when I came.
Right.
So I decided this time I want to really become fluent in French, and so I chose Senegal.
How are you doing now in French?
I am taking many classes, and I'm getting a lot of practice.
There you go. Practice, practice, practice.
Part of it is through teaching English. So oftentimes I'll be teaching a vocabulary word, and my students will be trying to affix that English word to a French word, and they will then tell me, oh, it's this word. And I'm like, okay, spell that word for me, because I need to know that word. So literally it's an exchange within the classroom where they're giving me more French vocabulary.
Beautiful.
And even we're at work, the guards will be constantly teaching me Wolof. So greeting me in Wolof and trying to write down Wolof words for me, so it's a constant exchange, and
beautiful,
I love it.
Beautiful. We have also Wolof, we have Serer, Jola, we have the Soninke. There's about about 8 or 9 languages spoken in Senegal. Why you chose Senegal for the Albright then?
Well, I also wanted to go to a Francophone Francophone African country.
Right.
And so with the Fulbright program, there's a few different options of available countries. And I was actually at a friend from Ghana who was studying in the U.S. and I talked to him. I was like, "Oh, these are in your general region." And I said, "Where should I go?" He's like, "He would really like Senegal."
Right.
But I was also just attracted to just the sense of Senegal is known as being a very peaceful place, of having good Muslim-Christian relations, and has had a very peaceful democratic process generally. So
absolutely.
There's a lot to learn from Senegal.
Well, thank you for the compliment. Lucille, what brought you to Senegal? Why another English-speaking country?
So my grandfather, when I was growing up, came to Senegal almost every year. So I grew up surrounded by a lot of Senegalese culture and Senegalese people, but I never had an opportunity to actually go myself.
Right.
So I feel like I knew a lot about Senegal, but I hadn't actually been here. And so this was my opportunity to do that. I would say I came here to improve my French, but I was a French major in college. So just, keep using it. I speak French at home with my family, so so it's just an opportunity for me. And French-speaking Africa was definitely important to me, but Senegal in particular was more important to me just because of my family history with Senegal. So it was really important to me to go to a place that had such a significant meaning in my family.
Rochelle?
I was an English teacher in a French school in the U.S. for about 5 years, and I really enjoyed the process of welcoming foreign teachers to come and watching them kind of learn about American culture. And about halfway through that time, I knew that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be going overseas and learning something new. So I started talking to teachers I knew who had lived overseas, some of my advisors from college, and I knew I wanted to go to Francophone Africa. And over the course of 2 years, all these people I trusted, all these people I really liked kept saying, "Have you looked at Senegal? You should look at Senegal." And just all the signs kind of pointed me here. So since I've been here, I've been living with a Senegalese family, doing a homestay for the last 5 months. I'm taking Wolof classes, and it was the right decision really to be here, even if I couldn't give you just one reason why it happened.
Right. Well, wonderful guys to have you here in Senegal, though. MashaAllah. Also, since you've been in the Fulbright for how 2 or 3 months already?
We're about almost halfway through our 9-month stay. So we arrived in October and we'll be here until July.
So the Fulbright is beneficial, been very a good experience for you?
Oh, it's been wonderful. It's more than I could have asked for. So it's been a great
Daria, with the Fulbright?
It's been great. I have learned so much. My language skills in French has improved tremendously, and I've just had experiences here in Senegal that I know I could not have anywhere else. For example, taking part in, I went with a family to participate in GAMU. That was a wonderful experience.
In Tivaouane?
In Tivaouane.
Beautiful.
Yes, it was very, it was wonderful. Traveling to S.Fallou, my family actually came to visit me over the holidays.
Beautiful.
My mom loved it here. Just experiences passing the New Year's here, watching the fireworks at night, just amazing experiences that only Senegal could offer.
MashaAllah. Yeah. With the Fulbright, are you content with that?
Oh yes, of course. I love it here. I think it's one thing to know a lot about a culture. It's another thing to actually live here and live every day, and also get to know it up close and personal.
Right.
And so it's fine to be in love with a culture from afar, but it's different to actually really be there. And so this opportunity has allowed me to really live the Senegal life for a little while.
Jërëjëf. You understand that word, right? Nyokabok, right, there you go. So with the Fulbright, Rochelle, how are you living it?
I am loving it. I mean, it takes a couple of months, I think, to kind of figure out where you fall in it. And, you know, every week I think I'm still learning a new neighborhood or a new place to go, still meeting new people. I was just out of the country for a couple of weeks, and once I got back, it was just, you know, coming home.
Yeah, well, this is a good way to promote peace, though. By the way, the UN, there's 5 languages has been chosen over there for top languages. Russian, spoken by 2.4% of world population. There's also Arabic, 4.23 of world population. English, 5.5. French, 1.1. Spanish, 5.85. So those are the 5 languages chosen. And since there's too much world problem, there's wars all over the place, though, and all the envoys of UN most of the time speak one of these 5 languages, and English is part of it. So what is it going to take for English as a tool to promote peace in the world right now, Rochelle? If it's not too complicated, a very complicated question, I guess.
Say it again. What does it take for English to be
to be used as a tool to promote peace? How are we going to manage to do that?
Well, I mean, I think any aspect of learning another culture is a way of promoting peace, of learning about other people. I think to communicate with each other effectively, we need to speak the same language. So I think any chance we have to use language as a tool to communicate with other people who are different than ourselves, that can be an excellent way to promote peace.
Because speaking languages, this is the necessity of it is just for make the other part to understand what you're saying. That's basically the translation of that of the language itself. So, Andrea, how are we going to use English? Possibilities to promote peace.
Well, I see language, like you said, as a tool.
Right.
It's a tool in order to allow yourself to be understood by the other. And I see it in terms of when we're speaking about peace, the ability to tell your story, to share your story, right? Oftentimes when we're talking about wars and things like that, we're talking about a lot of misunderstandings, talking about people having one side of a story and the other person having another side, and then there being that third side. Right? And so the ability to tell your story to the other and to share a language so that the other person can read or hear and understand your story is good. And we talked about the idea of exchange. And so just as I'm learning French, I'm learning Wolof, and so I'm teaching others English. Using those 3 languages for us to share our stories with each other gives us, helps to build our humanity.
Absolutely.
Helps the other person to understand and see us not as a statistic, not as a stereotype, but to see the other person as a human, because I get to tell my story and you are trying to understand who I am as a person.
Absolutely. English as a tool to promote peace?
I mean, I think one of the things that would definitely help towards English being that tool is also English speakers making more of an effort to learn about other cultures and other languages as well when they go to other countries, so that they can, there are just certain nuances in culture and meaning that you can't learn even in translation. There's just some things that I'm finding, especially with Wolof, there's just some things that can't be translated. So
maybe you haven't met the right translation.
Maybe not.
What was the word you couldn't translate?
I can't think right now.
Good.
I don't want to embarrass them.
No problem.
But I think that the more effort that gets made on both ends to learn each other's languages will help. But that being said, I agree with Zaria in terms of English becoming more and more prevalent, allows people to share their stories. And I think with social media, that's only increased because, like I said before, a lot of these platforms started off in English, and as a result, a lot of people use those platforms in English. And so it's a very quick way to share your stories, your perspectives, and also it's so visually based that sometimes you don't necessarily have to be super proficient in a language to share a part of your culture and your experience with people all over.
Peace with the English language. I think it's really about the people you meet as you're learning a language. You can study from books, you can study from texts, and that will help you learn the language. But when you actually get to meet people and you put a face on that, and then you meet up later for coffee, or they invite you to know more, it's really kind of, language is a means to the end. Just to get to meet people who are learning languages are usually open and curious, and some of those just friendships, whether they're a long friendship or a short one, those have been very meaningful to me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Again, we very delighted to have our bright guests today, though, visiting from America, of course. We're talking about mutations of languages, inshallah. Also intercultural exchanges, though. They're a member of Fulbrights. And also, hi to my friend I had a while ago. They're from Peace Corps, though, a different organization that's been run by the U.S., though, doing beautiful work here in Africa, helping environmentally, in terms of education, helping economically. We're gonna talk about that a little bit, inshallah. So those programs are really having an effect here in Africa, especially the Millennium Challenge, though. Firsthand, you can go in the regions of Africa and see roads being built. That's very important, and other hospitals and stuff like that has been financed by the U.S. government and helping Africa really to get much better. Now here you go in Africa with this different culture, you in classes, different environment. What really changed when you got into an African classroom? Your feeling?
I think, well, one thing that was just very shocking at first is how you signal the teacher that you want to speak.
Right.
So in an American classroom, you would raise your hand.
You do like,
yeah, this. Oh my goodness, my first.
You got scared, or
well,
you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, from an American perspective, it would seem very impatient, or maybe even a little bit rude at first.
Right.
So it took me a while to kind of realize, where is this coming from? Is this normal? Is this what I should expect? And I'll tell you, I was in a classroom a couple weeks ago. It wasn't my class. I was visiting someone's classroom that had middle school students. So I'm just sitting in the back, and I'm watching my friend teach. And he asked the question, and the whole class is going like this, and I loved it. Because I'm like, this is the sound of eager students, students who know this, who are ready to talk. And in that moment, I realized that my perspective had changed. So it's sometimes, it's little things like that, but that made me so happy to see them all just eager and ready to participate. So small differences that you have to understand where they're coming from in order to understand the action.
Right. The cultural change, I mean, in the African classroom?
I think that, I'm just trying to think. So a lot of the teaching that I do is in the American corner, so it's a little bit different. And but I do think, the relationship to time is a little different. Right. So you have to be patient with that and, manage your plans for the class accordingly. But I really find that Senegalese students are very eager and also very willing to help each other to learn, which I really like. And I often in my class don't necessarily have to step in as much. There are people who are willing to help other students who might be struggling.
Right. Dory, your feelings about the environment?
Well, I guess for me, so I'm also teaching in an American space, predominantly, and for the majority of my week. And so in that sense, there has not been that much of a change, except for that in the United States I teach students who would be considered in college or lycée, and here I'm teaching adults in the American space, so that's been a shift. The other days where I do teach in primary schools, the main shift has been in my classroom in the United States, we're all speaking English, and so I'm able to communicate many of my desires and commands with efficiency. Here, as I'm learning a new language, and then the children I want to communicate an idea, and I need to communicate it, and some of my students do not speak Wolof and don't speak French, and trying to find a common way for me to tell you, okay, let's all sit down now, let's all be quiet now. It has helped me to improve my communication skills. It has made me a more patient teacher, it's made me a more humble teacher, because I have to, we're working together to try to understand each other, and these are young children.
Right.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Anna, your what you felt in the African classroom?
Yes, well, as the others said, we're mostly teaching our classes through the American-run American Spaces.
Right.
So we're teaching, as for me, I'm teaching mostly middle school students and high school students after school. So they go to their normal classroom during the day and then come to my classroom. And so I think maybe the adjustment is more challenging for them because it's a style that maybe they're not used to. I like to play a lot of games in my classroom and have them talking to each other. So I think for my part, it was mostly a struggle at the beginning, trying to explain how things will work that I might take for granted that people would understand, and kind of adapting to what works, what doesn't work. But I've heard my students, daytime teachers have often said, oh, they talked about this that they did in your class. So I think it's exposing them to a different way of learning.
Absolutely beautiful. Is there a change though in terms of on the students' perspective though? Is it a problem from them, from having a teacher from America, I mean Senegalese or African teacher, listening to you, having a problem with the accent, or is there a problem on the terms of student achievement in the African side?
I think that the accent is an adjustment for students, and so students who come to my class regularly at this point have pretty much gotten used to it, but students when they first come to the class have a harder time. So there is that little bit of that culture shock in the beginning when you have a teacher who is a native speaker, and I think the same is true in foreign language classes in the United States when they have a native speaker come. There is an adjustment that happens. Teachers will slow things down and speak things a little bit more deliberately, especially if they're not native speakers. So that is definitely something that students have to adjust to, but that's also a huge part of why we're here. We're here to give them the opportunity to interact not only with a native speaker, but also to get used to hearing that, not only the accent, but the way we say things, the emphasis that we put on certain words, and even certain syllables. So that is a learning opportunity for them. It is certainly a learning curve, because if you've always had an African English speaking teacher, it is a little bit different.
Rochelle?
I think that's a challenge that's addressed really well with an American teaching philosophy. We try and stop and do kind of check-ins on a very regular basis. So we're trying to find out, are the students understanding this? And I want to create a classroom where they're comfortable saying, I don't know, or I don't understand. And the students, they will help each other understand, or especially once we've been together for a week or two, they will tell me, we don't get it, so I can find a different way to present it. Like Lucille was saying, whether it's with visuals or just rephrasing it, talking slower. I don't want to leave them confused for an extended period of time, but I think the American teaching style, we adapt constantly as we're going, so that helps meet that challenge.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Again, we're going to upload all this video, inshallah, of Echo from TOUBA that happens here on Lamphal TV every other 2 weeks. And also, hopefully, we're going to have Mr. Mushingi. He's still the ambassador here. Mushingi, we're gonna have, because we need someone to explain really the Millennium Challenge, how it is done, and how, because we've seen that it's really an opportunity here for Africa to do something that is really positive. Now I wanna get to a point that is very important to me though. The environment. I mean, since you've been to Africa, I'm sure you've been shocked of the environment situation. If you felt it this year, for instance, on this month of August, we didn't have no water in Africa. This has never happened. I've never seen collected the time where there's no water on the month of August. And the heat is getting harder every year. I heard it's from 10 years from now, it's going to be almost 2% of degree is going to be added up to currently what we're having. So I just wanted to know what is the role of Albright? What are you guys teaching? Is there any connection with the environment? You guys can help with Africa to really get it better, because it's getting really ridiculous right now. To the truth, yeah. Andrea, what your thought of that?
Well, when I think of the environment, I think globally this is a discussion that is being had,
right?
Just across the world, and my perspective as just a citizen of this world, is, it is a topic that I care about a lot. But in terms of the classroom, my main focus is English language, and the way that those two issues can intersect. You're not getting political in the no, but the way that those issues can intersect is in the topics that we do discuss. So the classes, the way I teach my class is very discussion heavy. I personally believe that English, the language, is learned well through discussion, through talking. And so oftentimes in some of the higher level classes, we'll read an article, we'll read different topics, and sometimes we'll read topics. So one class we read on corporate responsibility and environmental disaster, and talking about the role of corporations in the environment, and we had a debate on that, and we learned both English vocabulary and grammar structure, but we also talked about this issue that is globally understood, not just here on this continent, but just around the world.
Right. So English language is important, but before we talk about all these exchanges, we have to really get concerned with the livelihood of the planet first. That's my the reason why I'm asking these type of questions. Lucid, what do you think about that? I mean, the environment, anything you can do to help?
I think that, we've made some efforts, and I think it's because our American teaching style is often pretty content-based. So we use content as an opportunity for people to learn the language, but also engage critically with different subjects. I haven't quite reached the climate-related topics quite yet. It's going to be coming up in April for me. At least that's how I've planned it. But recently we've been having tea debates where we've brought up issues of climate change and had our high school students debate over that and present over that. And just generally doing programming for people to learn a little bit about recycling. We also had another theme in our tea debate was about litter and waste disposal. So different things that are impacting the environment, and we are trying to also contextualize it in something like how is it impacting their communities. So it's really opening that door to really start reflecting about that in the next generation, because ultimately the next generation is the one that's going to be living with these problems, living with the consequences, and potentially having to come up with solutions.
I think a lot of the students who come to our programs, at least here in Dakar, have an entrepreneurial focus. Many of our students either are starting their own businesses or hope they will start one in the future, and a lot of them really want to be doing something with their business that not just makes money, but is also making the world a better place. So many of them do have a focus on the environment, as well as on reducing poverty or on specific things that are close to their hearts. I think I can go on what Daria was saying there. It comes up through our class discussions. Just yesterday, we were reading a piece on social business, and we were talking about how different career fields could be related to social businesses. And so from an English lesson perspective, we learned all sorts of vocabulary about different career fields. We talked about connecting problems with solutions, making arguments for them, evaluating if they made it. These are all language skills. But our topic was 2 hours discussing how could a civil engineer make a difference with garbage? How could someone who is an outdoor enthusiast make a difference with deforestation? How could someone who works in the medical field help improve public sanitation? And this was our topic for 2 hours. Again, this is using English as a tool to have these conversations, but I'm constantly impressed by my students. They're the ones bringing the ideas. They're this young generation that is going to be bringing the solutions.
Did you set something on it, on that topic?
Well, I think with the environment, with any development issue in general, I think one of the great things about cultural exchange is that we can learn from each other. So there are things that I think that Americans can learn from Senegalese people, is that we're not using cars as much here, or when we do, we're carpooling, or we're walking more. I think we're not using the way that we eat food here. I think it's something that we can really learn from Senegal, though we're not using as much canned goods and processed foods or things that have to be imported, where it's more a little bit more local here. And I think the same as well, like there's different cultural aspects that, you know, I would, in the United States, I would never just throw trash on the ground. That would be unheard of. So I think trying to maybe encourage, like, okay, no, like, let's hold on to our trash and throw it in the trash can. But different things that we can learn from each other, too.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, of course, obviously, government have a role also to play on that. Teach children, you know, not to do just what you just said. It's a line of education that has to be taken in Africa. You know, to teach them gardening, planting trees. Those are things that really make difference, though. Seeing what happened in Africa right now with this climate, in about 20 years or 30 years is going to be a huge problem, and the world will suffer on that. You know, so hopefully something will be done in terms of the environment. This environment, there's a lot of problems in Africa, of course. There's also the economy, which is not too great. We are in the developing country. So with the Fulbright and all these programs that's been done by America to help this country, is there an effect right now? You've seen the first, when you came to Africa, you've seen that compares to what you heard, because first I've heard a lot of people, they even think that Africa is just one continent, one country. They don't even know Senegal and Ghana. They don't even bother with that, you know. And what did you felt these investment though from America? There's an effect here in Africa. You felt it?
I mean,
or there's more we can do?
I mean, I don't think that I've made any difference in the short time I've been here necessarily. Or that's something that we could even see in the short term. But I think too, it's important to share, like Lucille said earlier, a big reason that we're here is to share things that we know and we're experiencing about Senegal with people back home. And so I think that's been really valuable too, is making other people more aware of where is Senegal in the world, and what's the culture like? What are some things that I'm experiencing here that I can share with people back home? So I think that's
beautiful. Same question?
Can you repeat the question?
No, I was like you guys when you came to Africa with all these investment that's been done by the Millennium and other funds. Is it an effect? I mean, I'm sure it should be a report from the embassy or other organizations that tells you, you know, the effect of these organizations, what they've been achieved during all this time. Because Fulbright, I believe, been since have at least 3 decades, since or 2 minimum. So it must be in a report of how you guys doing firsthand here in Africa. Is there a positive or a negative effect of these
of our
investment?
teaching?
Right.
Yeah, that is a good question. I think, like Anna said, it's a little bit hard to tell in the short term the impact. That being said, I think when you start meeting people, older generations of, oh, you know, I used to work with this, you know, one Fulbright teacher, or I knew this one Fulbright, or I worked on a project with this one Fulbright. So I think that it does have an effect on people's lives and on people's perspectives. And then I think it particularly has an effect going in the opposite direction as well. Some people who I've met who've been able to go to the United States, even if it's only for a short time, even if it's only for 6 weeks, the things that they are coming back to Senegal with, and the ideas and the things that they are trying to get started here can only really improve things for, you know, people here.
Beautiful. Same question, Rochelle?
So I have to start out by saying I've just seen my little snapshot here, and we're at the halfway point in the program, so I think for me personally it's way too early to say what's the impact of it. But I'll tell you what I keep coming back to, what gives me so much enthusiasm are the young Senegalese leaders that I'm meeting through Fulbright. And a lot of them have had ongoing contact with the English language. I'm thinking of some of the young adults who are leading English clubs, who are leaders within English teacher associations here. They're Senegalese and they are going to change the world. So I think it's a privilege that we can come alongside and have some level of partnership there for a while, even if I'm just learning from them, or we can encourage each other for a bit. So I think I'm really excited for some of that leadership potential there. And we do spend so much time coming back to leadership, coming back to entrepreneurship, coming back to those themes. So I hope that we're contributing something to that conversation.
Beautiful. We have about 2 or 3 questions left, though, before the end of the program. We just have an hour to share all these beautiful stories, though, of the Fulbrights here visiting from America, and sharing also knowledge and you know, educational tools we can use, all for the betterment, of course, of our society. You guys going back to America now, is it going to change your I'm sure you're going to keep the teaching activities. Is it going to change your method of teaching by meeting some different people and African people?
Absolutely, absolutely. As I was saying before, that just my communication style, my level of patience, I've had to learn new techniques on we talk about checking in, how understanding how my students are learning, becoming using just different tools to communicate ideas. Also, just taking what I've learned from being here. One of the things, kind of tying into the last question and to this question, the idea of, I see myself kind of as an ambassador, and I think that's how Fulbright has set it up.
Absolutely.
As, so the way I use my social media, taking pictures, and there are many people in the United States who have never traveled outside the United States, have never traveled outside their city or their neighborhood, and would love to come to a place like this. And when I'm posting pictures of, you know, day-to-day life here in Dakar, I get people saying, oh my gosh, maybe I need to get a passport, and maybe I need to come to Senegal. I'm, you know, posting pictures of the monument, of the new museum, Musée de la Civilisation Noire, and just posting pictures of all the amazing things that many people don't know exist here, just in Dakar alone. Not speaking about Senegal, but just in Dakar. And so that is, I see myself as being a cultural ambassador for my communities at home who would love to come here and visit and haven't had the opportunity yet, and seeing just all the opportunities that are here. And that speaks to tourism, right? Absolutely,
brings money. Indeed, you're an ambassador. And what do you think of that? Is it going to affect your teaching skills?
Well, I'm not planning to go back to classroom teaching after my Fulbright term. I'll probably go into development work, working with NGOs. But I think being here really will impact that in the future. Whether just things that I see as problems in the U.S. or in Senegal, and how we can work together to overcome those.
Right.
So.
Your skills, will be any change on that?
So, similar to Anna, I'm not going to be going back to the classroom, although who knows what could happen in the future.
Back in the right.
But I previously, my role was working at a university, and I worked in international education, which was to helping university students have their own international experiences abroad. So U.S. students traveling to France and Italy and China and South America, all different kinds of places. And I think one of the things that I've seen in international education is that the programs are sometimes very limited in the African continent, as well as West Africa in particular. So being able to open people's minds to other possibilities, other places to go, and there are a lot of stereotypes that come with the decisions of where they want to study abroad. So helping open American students up to having a different experience, and also maybe having a life-changing experience.
Right. Rafael?
Back home, I'm an ELL teacher, so I work with non-native speakers in the U.S. And I think the experience of living here and trying to learn Wolof and all of these interactions I'm having on a day-to-day basis changes how I will be a language teacher in the future. I mean, I go and I buy an Orange card to refill my internet, and we bounce through 3 different languages before I finish the transaction. And that that's a lived experience that's going to shape things and when I approach students in my classroom. I also have made some friendships with some Senegalese English teachers that I hope will stay in contact by WhatsApp. Hopefully we'll be putting our future classes in contact.
Right.
We share resources now, and I think that'll continue into the future. Those personal connections will be important.
Beautiful, beautiful. You guys visited TOUBA yet, or the city?
Not
you
yet.
did?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet.
You should then.
Yes, it's on the list.
Absolutely. I will take you to TOUBA, inshallah.
Okay.
You should really visit.
You heard it here.
Absolutely. You should visit TOUBA, inshallah. That was it. An hour is so quick. I was so glad, so thrilled to have Anne and Warren, again, Lucille, Matthew, Doria Jackson, and Raphael Martini, bright minds visiting our country today and helping these, I call them world citizens. I mean, coming and really helping the planet. We have one world, one planet, and then if the planet is in good shape, we're all in good shape. That's all we need, inshallah. And thanks to all the programs that's been run by the U.S., though, Peace Corps again, and the friends who came in a while ago and share also their experience. A lot Africa can learn from them, and a lot also they can learn, obviously, from African culture. What's going to be your last words, your salam alaikum, and the people you want to say hi to, your shout-outs? Doria.
I just want to say thank you for having me
Well,
here.
thank you.
Thank
It was
you
a
for
pleasure.
having us.
Right.
This has been one of those moments that I'm
Right.
going to take back home,
Yeah,
right? One of those,
right.
those exchanges.
Beautiful,
so
beautiful.
I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah,
Your salam alaikum.
Yes, just thank you for having us. It's been a great discussion, and we're just very happy to be here in Senegal and experience all the Teranga that we have.
Beautiful. Lucille,
Thanks again for having us here to have this great discussion.
Right.
And that's hopefully something I hope to bring back to the United States, having
Right.
great discussion.
Beautiful.
And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Rachel, your last word, and
Thank
hi
you.
to the man watching.
Yes. My husband is sitting
Your
over there on
husband,
set.
right. What's his name again?
His name's Matt.
Matt, how you doing, Matt? Nice meeting you. There you go. Hey, you see, he's part of the program.
There we go. There we go.
You're good.
Thank you so much for
You're
having
welcome.
us.
Right.
I look forward to this being on Facebook, to sharing it with my
Inshallah, yeah,
students
absolutely.
back home,
Absolutely.
people here, and hopefully maybe we'll see you in TOUBA.
All right, let's see that. That's my promise. I will do that, inshallah. So until next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jërëjëf Sëriñ Tuubaa. Jërëjëf Maam Cheikh Ibrahima Fall.